This is the Parami of Aspiration. It's the 10th talk in the series on the Paramis. It's the 8th Parami, Parami of Aspiration. The title, you can say, could be Being Free While Longing for Freedom. Being free while longing for freedom. The Parami of Aspiration is Aditana, and it's Aditana is a few words in English would fit it. Determination, the chishut. Resolve, I'm resolving, like giving a kind of a promise, I'm going to get there. Motivation, longing, kmiha, also urgency, samvega, it's urgent. I have to get awakened. I have to see this. I have to see this. I have to understand what's going on. The urgency is there. Commitment is in that word as well. So it's a whole group of things. And in the Satipatthana, it says practice mindfulness atapa, which in the Goenka courses that I went to, Goenka always translated it as I forgot, ardency. Ardency. It's a word that people don't use in English anymore, but it means enthusiasm and with all your motivation and love. So it really invites us to ask, what is our real highest motivation? Actually, what is it? What is it that we long for? Kmiha. What is it we long for? If we ask ourselves, what's that? Well, everyone will say, I long for freedom. I long for release. I long to end suffering. Yeah, we can also say we long to go back to the womb, sure. But the trouble is that it's usually translated in the conditioned mind into, I want another car, I want another wife or husband, I want my children to be nice to me, I want peace, I don't want enemies, I want a better job, I want more money, I want a nicer flat, I want a holiday in south of France. It's always translated into fulfilling desire. You just think of what the word freedom. Everyone says, of course we all want freedom, but the Americans killed 3 million Vietnamese in the Vietnam War. And the reason is we want freedom. Freedom was the slogan of the Vietnamese War. And for the sake of freedom, defined as by America, they killed 3 million Vietnamese. So it's, we all say we want freedom, but the question is what it is. And we want satisfaction, we want perfection, we want release, and we really have to look at it a little more carefully. What it is that we really want, and what is our real motivation. And so, clearly, our yearning, our longing, our need, if it's translated into spiritual life, we're in good shape. We're already done very well. We're already in good shape. This spiritual yearning and spiritual longing, not in the Dharma perspective, but we would know it, for example, from we all have friends maybe who are poets or artists and who don't really eat a lot or sleep a lot. They really have to create, and they really have to write, and they really have to. I have friends like that, and it's the same longing translated more into a territory of trying to understand life, and that's really helpful. That it's not translated into what I want right now and what I need, what magiali, what I ought to have, but translated already into something more spiritual. And it gets deeper if it's a longing for an answer and a longing for existential truth. And I think all of us know that from our childhood. Ha'emet kiyumi, ha'shelot kiyumiyot. All of us know it from our childhood. Which child doesn't have that longing to try and understand? And then the child plays and checks, and the intensity of children when they really they don't sleep, but and I don't want to go to bed because I want to do this and want to do that, want to play with that and find that and argue and blah, blah, blah. The children have it quite naturally, and we can remember as a child maybe how much we have it, or we had it, because it's really a puzzle to be embodied, to be in a body, to arrive in a body. It's a real puzzle. What the hell is going on? And if we're awake to that, even as a child, then we have an urgency to understand. And that's the basis of the aspiration, Parami, Aditana. And it's certainly accelerated if and when you might come up with intense suffering. And two examples come to mind. One is Yael Simcha. She had a cancer. The cancer kept being part of her life. She went into some periods of deep practice, and gradually she could abandon the normal conditioned needs, and the longing became longing for release in a deeply spiritual sense. And the cancer created urgency, like there was surrender because of the cancer. And it all made that search urgent. Urgency is surrender. I don't care about anything anymore. Not all the rest is not that interesting. What's interesting is to really find total freedom, ultimate freedom. That's the only thing worth having. That's the only thing worth having.
You don't have to wait until we get cancer.
You don't have to. But sometimes the cancer can help. Deepa Ma is another example, a very well-known example to the Western Dharma community. She was an Indian woman from Calcutta, and she also had terrible tragedy in her life. Everyone around her died, her family one after another died from disease and so on, and she had a very hard struggle. And she met a teacher, Munindra, and in a really, really short time she had deep, deep, deep samadhi and awakening. And then she came after that to teach in America and other places, and she was a kind of guru for many people. But it came really from, and it was extraordinarily fast, her transformation. Really, really fast. And it was partly that the suffering created this spiritual urgency, where you're not looking anymore at the world through the filter of what I want, who I am, measuring it, maybe, maybe not, maybe yes, maybe no. But as you say, Sigalit, it's that we don't necessarily have to wait till the cancer. It can start also, you know, in any moment, we could feel now is the moment. Now it's urgent for me to understand what's going on. It's urgent for me to practice. It can be any moment. It's amazing the number of sort of great Dharma teachers and practitioners that just started their journey with the motivation, like, I've got headaches, I'll go to the... I heard that there's a good meditation teacher that will help me to deal with my headache. That's how it starts for many people. Or I feel restless. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Goenka and others also. Or I feel restless, I'm a bit agitated, I want to go and calm down. So I'll go into a retreat and I'll calm down. That's how it starts. Motivation has to be there, otherwise you don't do anything. But it starts with that. And then it goes from there into a place more and more and more. In other words, when you go a bit further, then your motivation will change. It will start with, I need to deal with my headache. After that you realize, well, the headache is actually not the issue. It's actually, I realize I need to deal with my life confusions and my life difficulties. And then you practice a bit further and you realize, well, actually, that's not the deepest motivation. I need to, the motivation has changed. I need to understand what's this being doing. What is this being? Never mind the motivation before. So the new motivation happens and it's more deep. And then the next motivation happens for awakening. And the next motivation happens. And it, as you practice, the motivation changes and gets deeper and deeper, step by step. At each stage, the motivation itself is transformed. And in certain way, it actually is more important that there is a motivation than exactly what you practice. In a way, the motivation or the aditana, the aspiration, the longing, the commitment, the surrender to the bigness, the unlimited reality is more important than the technique you use to see it, to practice. And the story I'm reminded of is once I was in America and at Spirit Rock, and I was listening to this Zen teacher called Harada Roshi. He was a Zen master from Japan. He has a Zen monastery in Japan. And he was answering questions. And someone got up in the audience and said, well, I get up in the morning and I do some yoga, then I do a bit of qigong, then I practice Kabbalah meditation, then I practice a bit of vipassana, then I lie down and do Dimyon Mudra, guided visualization. And he gave a whole list of different various things. And then he said to Harada Roshi, is that okay? And Harada Roshi looked at him and said, it doesn't really matter what you do as long as you practice as if your life depends on it. That's kind of strong one.
It's also attachment, no?
And it reminds me of the Buddha at some point, a Buddhist phrase where the Buddha was discussing aspiration with Mara. And Mara is the voice here of laziness in relation to aspiration, in relation to aditana, determination and aspiration. Mara comes as the opposite always, to take away the energy of practice. So Mara came to the Buddha and said, it's okay, don't need to practice so much, you have plenty of time. is loads of time. We can be. Why can't you relax? Why do you need to be so practice so intensely? Relax. Take your time. There is lots of time. Be like a child, innocent and free, and practice freely and easily as it comes. And the Buddha said, "No, Mara. You have to practice as if your hair is burning." So, aditana can be in the moment, in the intense moment of practice, and it can be in the long term. So there is like in the Satipatthana Sutta, atapa, the word I think is in the Pali, the keenness with which you practice, the enthusiasm, hitlahavut, in the moment. I want to go further. What's this happening? Like the questions we asked, Maze, one breath, Maze. And it's that. And Goenka Ajahn Tong, in the tradition, Burmese tradition, there is aditana takes a form very often of a period of intense practice. In Goenka it was, I remember, every day in the afternoon. I forget exactly what time. Morning and evening, aditana period of intense practice, like extra intensity. And with Ajahn Tong, this 14-day retreat, it's 48 hours without sleep, and that's aditana. So it can be defined traditionally as intensity. But as a parami, we have to look at it much more, in a much more deep and open way. And here the parami is much more long-term, tvach aroch. And we're like our journey, like building a house, step by step. Like I remember building my house with stones. And you get up in the morning, or I get up in the morning, and maybe I don't feel like lifting heavy stones the whole day and building with stone. But you get up in the morning and you lift heavy stones anyway. And so today you do it, you feel like it, and today you do it, you don't feel like it, and you still do it. And I remember that movement every day, getting up and say, today I'm going to build another shura of stones. They're heavy, they're difficult, it's messy, it's cold, it's hot, it's this, it's that, never mind, I'm going to build. And it's that long-term aspiration which in a way is more important. The surrender that it needs from you, rather than 48 hours of intense aditana. So the Buddha defined basically two areas of sources that help aditana or help motivation. One is inspiration, and it's part of the graduated path, hashra'a. It's part of the graduated path, and many times in the text the Buddha would say that he would teach Dharma so that people would get inspiration to practice. Not that they go home after that and say, I know Dharma, but that they would get inspiration from listening to the Dharma and then practice. And that's one of the reasons why we keep a tradition of giving Dharma talks. That even though all the teachers, including myself, know that if you ask anybody after a Dharma talk, what did you learn in this Dharma talk? Most people would say, I have no idea what he said. I forgot completely what the talk was about. You'll ask people coming out of the hall in a meditation retreat, what was the talk about? I'm not sure exactly, but it was very inspiring talk. So partly the talks are a source of inspiration, and the Buddha defined inspiration, just like I said, as a kind of falling in love with the Dharma. Letahev, to fall in love with the Dharma. To be like the poet or the writer or the painter that doesn't sleep or doesn't eat or doesn't think about stopping to have nice cups of coffee, but just needs to burning with the fire of creation. Similar, burning with the fire of inspiration. I must get to the root. I must get to the source. I must see that, understand it more deeply. And interestingly enough, in English, inspiration and aspiration come from the same root, which is to breathe. From the Latin, spirea, to breathe. So inspiration is breathing in, and is translated to Hebrew, hashra'ah. Inspiration is hashra'ah. And aspiration is what we said, motivation. And it's breathing out. So it comes from the same root. The second area that the Buddha talked about as a source is desire. Desire for liberation. I want to be liberated. I want to end suffering and be liberated. And so people ask the Buddha in their texts, there's discussion about this. Well, surely desire is not really helpful. I mean, you're talking all the time about desire, to let go of desire. And the Buddha had a few answers, and one of them is, okay, but when you have desire, and you still have desire as an unenlightened human being, at least replace ordinary desires with this one. So instead of a desire for a better car and a better house and a better partner and a better country and a better body or in a better whatever, at least replace this. And it's a very powerful motivation, this desire. It's desire to come back home, like you said, the womb. It's desire to end the meaninglessness of our life, to go out of meaningless life, pointless life, to desire to end our suffering. Desire to learn, to transform. Desire to be an angel, not just a kind of struggling human being. It's the basis of mythology, this desire. If you look underneath most of the mythologies in the world, they are about this desire for transformation, to go on the journey, to meet the guru in one way or another, to be the prodigal son, to go off into the world, to discover, to find yourself. These are very fundamental existential desire, and the Buddha encouraged it. But he said, keep moving the desire to becoming more subtle, more subtle, more subtle. Just like I said before, it starts maybe desire for ending my headache, and it gets more subtle and more subtle, this desire. And in the end, you realize that the desire itself is your Buddha nature. That the desire for release is your freedom expressing itself. It is the third noble truth. Your longing for freedom is the third noble truth working through your body, mind. You already know you're free in order to desire to be free. Otherwise you wouldn't have a desire to be free. So somewhere inside you it's the Buddha nature. And slowly, slowly this desire gets less and less crude, gas. It becomes more and more subtle until you really don't need it anymore. And that's what the Buddha said. Don't worry about desire for liberation. Yes, it's a desire. Yes, it's a kind of becoming, bhava, becoming somebody. Yes, it has those problems with it. But as you manifest awakening, the desire is reduced and reduced and reduced and reduced because you don't need it anymore. There is a famous sutta called the Sutta of the Logs, Bule Etz. And the Sutta of the Logs says, in the end, we get carried to awakening. All we have to do is stay with it, like logs, Bule Etz, on the river. As long as they're floating on the river, they must get to the ocean. There's nowhere else they can go. So you just have to stay with it, and the logs will get you to the ocean, as long as you don't get stuck on the way. That's all. So it's kind of this sense that it must happen. The desire is helpful, but you can let it go more and more as you change and transform, and in the end you don't need it. The thing is working through you. So I want to really now go into the practical aspect. What is it that stops aditana, aspiration? What reduces it? And one place that obviously reduces it is comfortable dharma. That we want dharma, but we want it to be comfortable for us. We're not prepared to give that much for it. We want it to be nice and cozy. Gemütlich in German. Gemütlich. In German, my parents used to say that a lot. Yeah. And it's we want the dharma as long as it's convenient and doesn't cost us too much. So we want to add the dharma to our life, but not to change our life really, but to have a kind of add-on, like added value. Sorry, I was thinking of Hebrew. When you say you can, it's
That's
just
what we all do.
Yeah, not so much. Maybe some do, but it's not recommended. At some point, you're going to realize it. That I'm asking for the dharma to be comfortable, too comfortable. I want to have everything I have already plus dharma.
Nice to have, not must.
Nice to have, yeah. Dharma that's nice to have, as well as everything else. That stops the motivation. We were not going to give much for it, and that leads to laziness, because the opposite of aditana is spiritual laziness. Atzlanut ruchani. Just what I said about that Mara is trying to tempt the Buddha into spiritual laziness. And one of the images in the texts about this, which is quite a nice image in one of the suttas, is that the house, you're in a burning house, the house is burning, and someone coming to rescue you, and mainly the Buddhist teaching is coming to rescue you, and the house is burning, it's samsara, everything is burning, life is hard, you're going to die. There's suffering all the time. It's not comfortable being embodied in this body. A house is burning, and someone is coming to rescue you. Say, I can rescue you from the burning house. And you say, but only if the weather is nice outside. If it's a good evening and there's a nice moon, tell me what the weather is like. Tell me if it's going to be a nice day. Then I'll think about it. And this is in one of the suttas. And we know this. People, sometimes at the end of a retreat, I still get a little bit of a shock when we have these circles, right? Sharing circles. And 50% of the people talk about the food. And I thought, wait a minute.
What about me?
Well, not so much me, but what about the Dharma? Is that, and people say, oh, it's great food here in Tovana retreat. And another aspect of spiritual laziness is the sense of, well, I can manage to go here, but no further. My Dharma, as long as I can be comfortable a bit and let go of some of my stress, the Dharma is really helpful for me. It's been really useful. I'm so glad, I'm so grateful for you to teach, and it's really helped me relax more in my life, and thank you very much. But what next? And this what next is the aditana. And it's in the Heartwood Sutta, some of you know it, talks about this. Don't stop. Don't stop in, okay, I've got rid of some of my sankharas. I feel more alive, I feel more open. The Dharma has been wonderful. Thank you. What next? Are you going for freedom, or are you setting your sights? Set your sights, I don't know in Hebrew how you say that. To set your goals or your sights further. The motivation is deeper. There, and there, and there. And not, okay, I got so far, that's good enough for me. I'm okay, it's fine, thank you. And another aspect that reduces motivation is simply small things that where life is so busy. We busy ourselves with small things in life that we have to do and that we think we need, and the small mind really can stop motivation, that we just get ourselves full of small things and small motivations. This I need to do, this I need to do, I need to fix the house, I need to fix I need to, whatever. There is quite a big thing, though, that I think all of us go through, which reduces motivation. And that's the sense that it's too big for us. The Yoter Gadol, Gadol Alai, this whole thing. That indeed is an issue for many of us, maybe all of us at some point. I can't do it. I'm not such a big person. I'm really rather a small person. I can't manage this journey. The spiritual journey is too much for me. Let someone else be a Buddha, but it's not for me. I feel discouraged. It doesn't work for me. I've been to 10 retreats and I don't seem to be changing. I still get pains when I sit. And after all these retreats, why is that happening? And maybe I'm just not built for this journey. I'm not intelligent enough. I'm not wise enough. I'm too fucked up. I'm too this. These kind of voices are really a serious issue for many of us, maybe for all of us, at some time or other, we go through it. I can't manage this thing. It's big on me. I'm not built for it. Let heroes do it, but not for me. But then, clearly, if all of us go through this, then we know that it's not really ultimately real. We can pass it, and we do develop anyway. And if you remember how I started off, the whole discussion about the paramis was paramis are a way of showing us how we've changed, even though inside a moment of experience we may feel, oh, it's not working, my body is hurting, and I've been on 10 retreats. And why does it happen? Obviously I'm not a good meditator. That's a moment, a voice in the moment, but it doesn't tell us really where we're at. The paramis do. Paramis can give us a much better indication of our journey. So it's something to be aware of. It will take, this discouragement will take away from our aditana, our determination, our motivation. And it goes with measuring. Medida. It goes with measuring where we are, trying to measure. I measure my progress. And we usually measure it negatively. Sometimes measure it positively, then there's another problem, which is not motivation but manas, conceit. And the final point I want to say is, also we covered this in one of the earlier discussions, ethical issues. Sila can undo our motivation. If we screw up in terms of our behavior in life, the way we act in the world, it can boomerang on us and somehow collapse our motivation. There's something there that lotahol, not pure, and our motivation can be damaged through sila. So it's something just to be aware of. And now, so what increases the motivation? What helps our motivation? I mentioned two sources that are quite mentioned a lot in the texts, namely inspiration and desire. But in a very obvious way, belonging to Sangha. Part of Sangha increases motivation. That's why we need Sangha. Sangha is really important to cancel all of those problems that take away the motivation. Sangha will reduce those problems. I can't do it, it's too big for me, or I'm comfortable Dharma, or it does, all these Sangha will give that support, that dedication, even when things go difficult. Like in a service retreat, and many of you have been volunteering in Tovana and done service retreats, and so motivation can be sometimes difficult. Cooking all day, such a lot of stress and activity. I've got to cook all day and work all day from morning to night, and I'm not sure if what I'm getting. And then there can be discouragement. But the Sangha heals that. The Sangha increases motivation. And along with the refuge, faith, of course. Faith in the Buddha, faith in the Dharma, faith in the Sangha increases motivation. Faith is something quite subtle and powerful. It's not belief, faith. It's trust, it's confidence. I can do it. it's a sense of I really believe that there is another way to be out of suffering. I really believe it. I really feel it. I know from my own experience that I can cut through suffering. I can look at things differently. That brings faith. I touch freedom. I touch inner space. I touch moments of chesed, of release. I touch these moments. That brings faith. So faith is an important source of determination of aditana. And we see it. And we can even look at faith and see it as skillful and helpful. See that we can increase it and see it's helpful to, just like the refuge. We take every day the refuge in the Buddha, Dharma and the Sangha. If we do that, or if we keep taking refuge, it works on us. We can see it as a skill. And not measuring anything. The Buddha said you can never know when an axe gets blunt. Kehe, axe is a garzen. You'll never know exactly what moment it became blunt. But you know that if you use it again and again and again, it becomes blunt. When? You don't know. Blunt or sharp. When you sharpen it, kehe or afuch. Sharpen, sharpen, sharpen. When is it sharpening? When it's done? You don't know. Using a tool, it gets blunt. When it happens, you don't know. You can never measure something which happens bit by bit by bit by bit. You don't know when. So you give up measuring. You don't know where you are, really, because there's no ruler, sergel, by which you can measure where you are. So that's another place of letting go of measuring, of concern. And just like with all the paramis, there is also a subtle place of more subtle place, din, of increasing motivation and commitment and enthusiasm. And one is this, I would say, blessings that arise in our life, the blessings that we feel, and how, just very simply, our day, as we get up in the morning and we live our day and we go to bed at night, the day, we begin to see this day as a blessing and not a problem. And it works. It works, and that gives motivation. This day is a blessing, and we move there through practice. We begin to move there. Everyone, all of you know what I'm talking about. This is not something weird. This is every one of you here knows it. That the day is shifted. There are all the problems of life, of relationships, of money, they're still there, of health, of everything, of politics, of the whole lot is still there. Nothing changed but this day is a blessing. This moment is a blessing. I'm glad to be alive. That attitude, changing the attitude to life's problems, is on the subtle level giving us a lot of motivation and a lot of enthusiasm, encouragement to keep practicing. And it's the Buddha nature that is on a deeper level. The Buddha nature inside us is the source of motivation. It's the Buddha nature manifesting in us. If we become less a self that I need to practice and become liberated. If we get ourselves out of the way, then the longing itself just happens through us. The Buddha nature is expressed through longing for liberation, and we just allow it. And that's on a subtle level. There's a subtle or deep source of motivation. We allow it to take us. We allow the Dharma to take us. It's not that we need to struggle, to be motivated, to be long for freedom. The longing is the freedom. So, in a way, the freedom is freeing itself through us. And that means we just let go. That kind of aditana is just surrender. It's just pure surrender. And is on a deeper level. And it actually goes into the deepest level too, which is the bodhisattva level. As all of the paramis, there is the bodhisattva level, which is that recognition that we are already free, while manifesting longing for freedom. We're already free. The motivation then happens through oneness. We're already free. Freedom is happening. Freedom is there through us. And it's the bodhisattva motivation. In the Tibetan tradition, some people take the bodhisattva vow, the neder, is it? Of the bodhisattva every day. And I want to read it. And with that I'll finish this talk. For the benefit of all beings, from now until reaching perfect enlightenment, I shall wholeheartedly practice wholeheartedly, with all my heart. That is aditana. I will practice the deepest paramis. I will embody the deepest paramis for the sake of awakening of all beings. That's the bodhisattva vow. You can see it's kind of coming from a place of the deepest motivation, allowing these to be expressed through me, allowing the freedom to be expressed through me, allowing, for the sake of all beings, the compassionate motivation, for the sake of all beings, not me. It's not me doing this. And there is something very mysterious, very extraordinary. So I wish you all the deepest motivation, that you just listen to the motivation and the deep longing that is coming through you, and seeing that it doesn't belong to you. It's the voice of awakening already there. So let's take a minute